Greetings, everyone. Today we have with us Mr. Eston McKeague, President of the Young World Federalists, which is a leading World Federalist organization with chapters and partners across continents. He holds a MSc in Political Science, Public Policy and Governance from the University of Amsterdam and a BA in Global Affairs with minors in both Economics and Religion from Western Washington University. Originally from Seattle, he currently resides in Berlin and has traveled across countries, often volunteering and working for diverse sectors, ranging from commercial salmon fishing to delivering furniture to needy people on a voluntary basis, from working at a Hare Krishna Temple to fighting a forest fire in India. So, firstly, thank you very much for joining us in today. It was really kind of you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. It's good to be here.
I'll begin with how did you become a World Federalist and when and where did you come across the idea?
Yeah. Well, I've always been an advocate for world peace, even when I was in my childhood as a young person. And I discovered world federalism in high school, just sort of exploring on the internet. But I didn't get involved with the movement until I finished my master's. But before that, sort of my becoming a world citizen, I was fortunate enough to travel in my youth. So like you explained in the very kind introduction, I did a bit of traveling, and that really shaped my perspective as a world citizen, which drew me very close to these ideas, brought me closer to world federalism.
Yeah, you traveled around 9 months, right, when you were 18 across the world?
Yeah. So after I graduated high school, I traveled for 9 months. Yeah, I started in Tanzania, and then I went to Europe, sort of the Schengen zone, and then Turkey, and then India. Yeah, it was an amazing trip, and it definitely shaped who I am today.
Yeah, that's very inspiring. I would like to undertake a trip like this in the future. Of course, when the situation improves.
Yes. Yes, of course. Not now.
So, how has been the journey of the YWF until now? Could you give us a brief insight into the triumphs, challenges, and opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. We have an organizational history being worked on. We need to complete it and put it on the website. But yeah, in a very brief, there's a lot of details, obviously, but I'll just keep it pretty short. So we were founded around 2 years ago by a young man from Australia and a young man from the United States, Nicholas Rowe and Daniel Blewett. And since that time, we've been growing extremely fast. And we've also inspired at least 3 similar organizations or groups, including the Global Federal League, to start. So that's also very flattering. So one of our greatest opportunities is that we're all volunteer. So we have many passionate people who work tirelessly to build support for world federalism around the world. But unfortunately, not many people can sustain such a high energy work for so long. And so people get burnt out and they drop off, and that's difficult to deal with. So I'd like to secure in the future, I'd really love to secure like an operational grant, so we could hire some staff, because I really believe that paid employees would really change everything for the organization. Yeah, so it's really nice that everybody's so passionate and very passionate volunteers. Yeah, but at the same time, working with volunteers is very different than working with employees.
Yeah, that personal connect gets absent somewhere when it comes to employees. But again, volunteers, they're actually difficult to manage because they have their personal commitments. Then timing comes to an issue. Like there's an issue of timing, and also there's a personal experience of the GFL here that we had put up a LinkedIn post. So initially, a lot of people they joined in, but later on, due to some other problems, we couldn't materialize that. So we're working on that.
Yeah,
I believe you're also in the
good
board
luck.
of, yeah, sure. I believe you're also in the board of Citizens for Global Solutions. So could you tell us something about them?
Sure. So they're actually one of the oldest World Federalist organizations. They were founded in 1947, a few months before the umbrella organization, the World Federalist Movement. So they're actually older than the World Federalist Movement. And they're US based. So all of their operations are all in the US. However, they're very eager to work with the Young World Federalists. Like many other World Federalist organizations, they're quite old. Their membership and their volunteers are around the age of 50 or older. And so they're really eager to see young people interested in the movement and interested in getting involved. So actually, the Young World Federalists has worked with them. In my position on the board, I sort of act as a liaison between both organizations. And so right now we have a joint membership launching soon. So it only applies to people in the US because it's a US-based organization. But if you're under 30 years old and you're in the US and you become a member of the Young World Federalist, then you have the opportunity to become an honorary youth member of Citizens for Global Solutions and also get a free copy of the book Planethood by the Nuremberg trial lawyer Ben Ferenc. So it's a really cool opportunity for young people in the US to get involved. Yeah, I really love Citizens for Global Solutions, and they have a lot coming up in the future, a new website, and they're hiring more staff. So they're actually growing as an organization, which is really cool to see.
Indeed. Coming to the movement, how has the movement been over the years, and what do you personally think about its potential, especially considering the current pandemic situation and the geopolitical dynamics?
Well, I won't pretend. The movement is very old, like I was saying before, and also quite divided. So we need to be honest about these things and aware of it. So there's quite a lot of work to do to rejuvenate the movement, to unite the world. A common thing that's said is we need to unite the World Federalists if we're ever going to unite the world. And beyond that, there is a lot of potential for World Federalism to become something that unites not only people interested in this idea, but other groups of activists as well, like climate activists and social justice activists and so on and so forth. So there's an amazing potential here for World Federalism to really be a catalyst for bringing many different types of groups together for this, to give humanity a voice in global affairs. With respect to the pandemic, it does give us an opportunity to show how national governments hurt the best interest of humanity. And I could talk more about that later. There's a few questions coming up that I know kind of touch on this similar theme. But yeah, the pandemic does give us a great opportunity. However, it still requires a lot of work. I think that many World Federalists see these global events occur, things like climate change even, or the pandemic, or world wars, and they hope and expect that people will come together naturally. And unfortunately, this takes a lot of work and time and energy to bring many different groups of people together. So it's not something that we can expect to happen without our hard work.
Yeah. Like if we go through the history during the World Wars and then later during Cold War also, we had many active World Federalist organizations which are now almost defunct, but like they were very active during those times. But still, like we have a lot of work to do. So that's the journey which we'll have to undertake. So currently, what are the prominent World Federalist organizations and how have they evolved over time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's important. The main event, that sort of the birth of the movement, was in 1947 in a city in Switzerland called Montreux, and there's a declaration called the Montreux Declaration that they all wrote and signed. However, at that meeting, it became obvious to the participants that there was three main groups of World Federalists. There was people who thought, there was Europeans who believed strongly in European federalism as a first step to world federalism. And then there was others who believed that the first step should be writing an Earth Constitution and implementing this Earth Constitution through ratification. And then another group saw the birth of the United Nations and believed that we could just make a few changes to the United Nations and that would become a world federation. So you kind of have European federalists, constitutionalists, and reformers. And these are very loose terms and everybody also agrees. It's not so clear cut. But since that time, these three groups have really been doing their own thing. So you have like the European Federalists, the Union of European Federalists, and their youth organization, JEF, in Europe. And then you have Earth Constitutionalists, like the Earth Constitution Institute, Democratic World Federalists. Similarly, it's like the World Service Authority, which so they're kind of more similarly trying to create like a provisional world government in the name of humanity. And then you have more reform-minded organizations like the World Federalist Movement, which was super important for the founding of the International Criminal Court, as well as the Campaign for the Responsibility to Protect. Citizens for Global Solutions for a long time was a reform-minded organization. And so they've they formed these groups really early, 1947, and they've more or less remained in the very same groups that they started out in. And that's sort of, I could talk a lot more about it, but I think that's a short summary.
Yeah. Indeed, there's a lot of history behind the movement, and that does not feature in the textbooks and various other sources of information. But if media attention gets onto these topics, if these stories, if these events they're narrated back, I believe that would be very detrimental to the movement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we need to appear as a united front. We need to be united and share common goals and values. So I'm really eager for the umbrella organization, the World Federalist Movement Institute for Global Policy, to facilitate collaboration between these different organizations and different groups so that we can have common values between all of us, common goals, strategies, policies, because we cannot expect humanity to do that if we can't do it ourselves.
Yeah. Now, most people, they consider world federalism as a very academic concept. So what ways would you suggest to make it simple, relatable, and easy to understand?
Yeah. So this is actually closer to what I studied political science and public policy. So this is really close to what I studied. So I like this. I like this challenge of world federalism. It's one of the main reasons I got involved, because it's such a big, abstract, broad idea, so far removed from reality for so many people. So it's our job as World Federalists to relate this big idea to the issues that people care about. So most people aren't necessarily concerned about the lack of democratic legitimacy of the United Nations. That's not something that keeps many people up at night. But what does concern many people is, food security, healthcare costs, climate change is a big one, environmental migration, economic migration, jobs, education, these core issues that matter to us all. And so it's really important that when you're communicating with someone outside the movement, that you should relate world federalism to the issues that people care about. So find out what concerns people, what changes they want to see in the world, because pretty much everybody wants the world to change in some way. And so you can connect world federalism to the things that they care about. And it's a difficult task, and it's not always easy, and it's a challenge, and it hurts my brain sometimes to do this. But it really is the best way to make this big, broad, abstract idea relatable for everyone. And I believe that's one of the biggest things that we can do, the best things we can do.
Yeah. Framing up local arguments and then like converting various booklets and maybe let's say documents into local languages, reaching out to people's causes and
Mhm.
beliefs. Yeah. So are there any upcoming?
Yeah, and even one by one.
Yeah, of course.
Sorry.
Doing that all together would jumble up and people get overwhelmed by the amount of information that's there.
Totally.
So are there any upcoming events
Um,
which World Federalists can mark on their calendars?
yeah, totally. Well, the big one, most recent, coming up really soon, is like the World Federalist movement is having a congress, and I believe people can observe. They can join as like observers. I think it costs money. I'm not an organizer for this event, so I don't know all the details. But yeah, I believe if you're really interested, you can attend that. It's going to be the second week of July for 4 days. I think 3 hours every day. Yeah, and that would be a good way to just see how the umbrella organization is doing and how the organizations themselves around the world communicate and work together. But that's maybe only for people who are super interested. Something that's for everybody and that I'm really encouraging everybody to get involved in would be the Week for World Parliament in October. So this is actually a program that the Young World Federalists is helping to organize this year. The theme is hashtag share the vaccines, touching back on that, what we talked about earlier with the how national governments are essentially hurting the fair distribution of vaccines, which can lead to more opportunities for mutations and prolonging the pandemic because some places just don't have any vaccines, and so the virus mutates. We're all very much experts on viruses now, so I don't need to get into the science of it. But yeah, so that's in October. Typically, people it's October 24th or a few days before and after. It's a whole week, so you can do it whenever. And people find their friends, find people that they're interested in their city, and then take a picture together with the words "World Parliament Now" or "Share the Vaccines" or "Global Democracy" or whatever slogan or message related to the cause. And then we'll put those pictures online and we'll show the size and spirit of the movement. And then hopefully we'll have educational events alongside, maybe more activist sort of disruptive events. It's really up to the local organizers, whatever they're interested in planning. So I'd highly encourage you to go to worldparliamentnow.org. There's a lot more information there and the opportunity to sign up as a local event organizer. And we offer support for all event organizers and help. And we're planning on even shipping printed materials around the world, like posters and flyers for these events. So yeah, check it out, worldparliamentnow.org.
This is a highly anticipated movement for all the World Federalists across the world, and even people who don't know about World Federalism. Perhaps everybody can relate to the share the vaccines theme. So this is a manifestation of making World Federalism relatable to the common people. And yeah, we'll be putting that link in the description so all of you can have a look at that and do stay tuned to the campaign.
Cool, thank you.
And this is a personal question. As a person who has traveled across the world, volunteered in diverse range of civil societies, has been involved with a vast range of professionals, what tips would you give to the aspiring world citizens and globetrotters?
I love the globetrotter term. I think that's great. That's very World Federalist. Yeah, the biggest tip, and this is something that I also I always have to remind myself of these things too. But I really value curiosity. So if just stay really curious and have an open mind, and say, for a long time in my youth, I had a rule of saying yes to everything. Of course, that's not always possible, but especially when I was traveling, if anybody invited me to do something, I always made sure to say yes. And that just was a great rule to follow, and it got me to have a lot of really cool experiences that I didn't even know were possible or didn't expect. And on top of that, just also online, I spent a lot of time reading random Wikipedia pages, which is basically how I found World Federalism. So yeah, I would really encourage people to stay curious. And then alongside that, being humble and modest is extremely important. Knowing your limitations and asking for help. These sorts of things are really critical in life and in World Federalism and work. Yeah, they're kind of these standard things. These are the standard things that when people say, like, what's your tip for young people? It's always like, yeah, stay humble and be curious, read books, stuff like that. So I'm not adding much new here. I'm sure maybe someone much older than me might have more wisdom to pass on. I'm only 26, so I don't know.
No, but indeed, this was very comprehensive, and though I cannot relate to the traveling across the world part, but I can surely relate to searching up random Wikipedia pages, and that also led me to world federalism. So I searched for world government, then I came across world federalism, and that's where all the journey began. So yeah, that is something highly
Yeah,
relatable
yeah.
and fascinating.
Yeah, cool.
What can a person without a World Federalist chapter in their city or town do in order to contribute to the movement, and what would be your tips for them?
Well, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, so we have a lot of things people can do just right on our website. We have 5 campaigns that people can participate in relating to different issues. So one is very World Federalist. It's make Earth democratic. But then the other ones are related to the issues that people care about. So we have Save Earth, Abolish War, Go Beyond, which is like ending scientific and technological nationalism, and then Protect Humanity, which is like human rights and solidarity with humankind. And so we have these we have these campaigns where people can, share something on social media, send a letter to a politician or an influencer, and also just sign up in support. Put your name down and say, I like this, and say why. And then you can also donate, of course, to us or to other World Federalist organizations. But it also goes back to what we were talking about before with relating World Federalism to the issues that people care about. So also just having conversations with the people around you, with your friends and your family, and getting through this stigma, this like New World Order, world government stigma. You need to overcome that and explain the merits of federalism and how it empowers humanity to its common interests and protects the common interests of us all. And so, yeah, having conversations with people in your circle is perhaps one of the easiest and best things that you can do, even if you don't have a chapter or a group in your city or country.
Yeah, and perhaps alongside volunteering or contributing something, people also they develop at a personal level, so they get to know more about the world. And this is something which I can say about myself. With associating with the Young World Federalists, I got to know a lot about world politics, a lot about economics, and then how voluntary organizations they function. So at the end of the day, you're a better person. You end up as a more enlightened person. So this is something everyone must consider.
That's great. That's really good to hear. Thank you, Omkar.
Which single issue of the world affects you the most?
Yeah. So I must admit, before I even get into this, I have to recognize my own privilege as a pretty well off white guy living in Europe. So I don't. There's a lot of issues that affect more people than me or closer than me. I'm pretty protected. If anything, I'm one of the main cause. My carbon footprint's way too big, and I'm if anything, I am a problem. But there is an issue that really affects me personally, I guess, and that would be like immigration and borders. So I'm originally from the United States, and I'm in love with and I'm married to someone from Germany. And so that's difficult. And essentially, the two countries, Germany and the United States, don't want us to be a relationship. They don't want us to be in love. They don't want people to be in love or have a relationship who aren't from the country. And so it's a light form of nationalism at a certain point when countries sanction transnational relationships or binational relationships. And so that's affected me personally a lot. And in fact, the only way out of it was to get married. And so we were basically forced into this. I either had to leave and go back to the United States or get married. And so I couldn't just be a boyfriend and girlfriend with someone from another country and live with that person. It's not possible. Even between two countries they call themselves best friends, Germany and the United States. So these are friendly countries, and we're still not really encouraged to have a relationship. Anyway, so that affected me. It's been a big part of my life the last year. I'm married, and so here we are.
And let's imagine the situation in countries which are like belligerent to each other. Actually, this is really sad that like, love has no nationality, right? So between two countries, that should not determine the level of harmony between the citizens. That's something political, but it's having an effect on the social relationships that is very, very alarming.
Yes, it doesn't help. It doesn't help with the peace on earth and everything.
So going on from transnational solidarity, what is your interpretation of cultural globalization, and how would you distinguish cultural globalization from homogenization?
Those are big words, Omkar. So I would. It's a really good question, and it is almost related to what we're talking about right now with sort of a global identity and being able to interact across borders seamlessly between nations, basically being citizens of Earth. So I guess it's easier to define cultural or social globalization by saying what it's not. So the easiest thing for people to relate to or to identify would be like economic globalization. And that's pretty obvious. There's one global economy. We're all interconnected. And that's pretty obvious. I don't need to explain that too much. We have the World Trade Organization and the World Bank and these global economic institutions that kind of provide this one economy. And then world federalism is largely related to political globalization, one polity, one electorate on earth, one parliament, these sorts of political goals, but in a global sense. However, there's cultural, and now we can move on to the social and cultural globalization, which is much, in my interpretation, is closer to identity and how we see ourselves, how we fit in the group, and how we fit in with humanity. And so essentially if it's globalizing, if it's progressing, then more people on Earth would see themselves as world citizens. And that would be cultural globalization. And so basically the growth of global citizenship. And how would you distinguish cultural globalization from homogenization? I would say, so global citizenship doesn't necessarily mean that we all speak the same language, eat the same food, have the same values, have the same religion, these sorts of cultural things. And that's really important. So I think I can speak for most World Federalists when I say that the diversity of humankind is what makes us so beautiful and strong. And I think all World Federalists love the diversity of humankind, and it's so fascinating and beautiful. And if you study anthropology at all, I mean, there's just so many different types of people, and that should continue. And the different types of people should be protected. And so actually, what's quite interesting is how the current system of nation states doesn't, sometimes it hurts certain people groups, people without a country, people like the indigenous American Indians in the United States. or the Kurds or Kashmiris who are largely occupied or caught in the middle of a conflict. So there's many parts around the world where the current system of nation states is actually hurting the diversity of humankind and forcing people to learn a language or change their religion and things like that just because of the countries, just because of nationalism. So in theory, a world federation would actually protect and encourage and promote more diversity of humankind and more languages and things like that. So I think that's how I separate cultural globalization and global citizenship from homogenization.
Yeah, those are some really beautiful words, and that's what is the basic aim of our movement. So we don't really want people to lose their basic identity. So you can stay a patriot alongside being a world federalist. You don't necessarily have to set aside your patriotism. To quote Gary Davis, he was often called an anti-patriot and anti-national, things like that. But he have famously proclaimed that I'm still a patriotic American, but firstly, I'm a world citizen. So that's the spirit, and let's hope that we are able to spread our ideas among people.
I hope so.
Lastly, since you mentioned the Week of Action for World Parliament, could you tell us something more about that? Like, what all cities are you planning
Yes.
to conduct that in, and what are the events?
Okay. Yeah. Well, we only recently launched the sign up form for organizers, so it's hard to tell what cities. I know we're going to focus a lot. I think New York is going to be a big focus because the UN is there, and we'll have the opportunity to protest outside the United Nations. I'm in Berlin. I'll probably do something here in Berlin. You're in Kolkata. I know you're planning to do something. Is that correct? Kolkata is the right city, right? I don't want to say the wrong city.
Yeah, I know that's the right city.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, so you're there and you'll do an event. Yeah, and I think New Zealand. I forget the name. It's a small city in the south of New Zealand that's also planning. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, I think a lot of the events are actually going to be online this year. So then the location doesn't necessarily even matter. So there'll be ways to participate no matter what, no matter where you are, even if you're in a small town. We'll put all the information on the website for all the events. And then so for the online ones, it'll probably just be as simple as joining a Zoom call or watching something, on Instagram Live or whatever the organizers plan to do. Yeah, and I'm really eager. I'm doing a lot of pretty much every meeting that I have now. I shamelessly plug the Week for World Parliament. I'm always trying to tell people to get involved, and many people are like, "Why are you talking this isn't our issue?" And I'm like, "No, it's your issue now." It's hopefully we'll get some more involvement. I know the Young European Federalists have traditionally been very involved and have participated. So I am encouraged. They're going to actually talk about it soon. So hopefully we'll get some Young European Federalists involved in helping to organize. But this year, the goal is to have a really big geographic spread because world federalism for far too long has been focused in North America and Europe, and it needs to be a global movement. So I'm really eager to see events take place in the global South, so-called, and all around the world, in small cities and big cities. So I would really love. So please, it won't happen by itself. A lot of people say, "Oh, is there an event in my town?" And I'm like, "Is there?" It's up to you, So I really encourage you to get involved and take the initiative and plan an event. And like I said before, we can help you. We're here to help. Any questions you have, just send an email. Yeah, and like Omkaar said, the link will be in the description. And there's a lot more information on the website if you have any questions.
That's very encouraging and exciting because it's the first time for many of us. I have never had any experience of conducting an event like this, and managing such a lot of things. Thanks to the internet, I won't say thanks to the pandemic. It's a white part of the cloud that we're getting an opportunity to connect with each other via the internet. So it's basically the spirit. Infrastructure doesn't matter. Like you might not be having a lot of fireworks and all out there, but it's their spirit that matters. So let's hope for a very enthusiastic global week of action. So stay tuned to all the updates. We'll be updating a few videos on that on an occasional basis. And thank you very much for joining in and providing a valuable insight into the movement and the contemporary global lifestyle, alongside a personal touch. That was something which was really relatable, and we believe that times improve. We are able to campaign for a better world. So we are doing our bit, and let us hope for the best. On a concluding note, on
Thank
behalf
you
of
so
the
much.
GFL, extend my sincerest best wishes and solidarity to you and the YWF in our peaceful and passionate struggle for a global democratic federation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Omkar. Have a good day.
To you.